Welcome to our deep dive into the world of psychology.
Ooh, interesting.
We'll be using excerpts from a psychology textbook and a scientific journal
Yeah,
to explore the intricacies of personality and psychological disorders.
I like it.
Get ready to unpack some fascinating insights about how our minds work and what makes us tick.
Yeah, it's interesting because this deep dive tackles two seemingly separate areas of psychology, personality and disorders.
Right.
But what's really cool is that they're deeply intertwined.
Okay.
Understanding one can shed light on the other.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this exploration so compelling.
I'm already intrigued.
Okay, great.
So where do we begin?
Let's start with how our understanding of personality has evolved.
Okay.
You've probably heard of Freud and his theories about the unconscious mind.
Of course.
Well, he got a few things right, like
Yeah.
highlighting the influence of unconscious processes and defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
Modern research has really shifted our perspective.
So instead of viewing personality development as fixed in childhood, we now know it's a lifelong process.
Exactly.
And that mysterious unconscious
Yeah.
isn't some dark hidden chamber.
No,
It's more like a parallel processing system operating outside our awareness.
exactly. It's constantly influencing our perceptions, memories, emotions, even the stereotypes we hold.
Wow.
It's not just about repressed desires. It's about how our minds efficiently process a ton of information below the level of conscious awareness.
So what you're saying is that even though we like to think we're in control,
Yes,
there's a lot going on behind the scenes that shapes who we are and how we behave.
precisely.
Okay.
And that complexity is precisely what makes this study of personality so fascinating.
Right.
But it's not all about the unconscious.
Yeah.
Humanistic psychology emerged as a counterpoint to Freud's somewhat pessimistic view of human nature.
Right. Humanistic psychologists like Maslow and Rogers
Yeah.
emphasized our potential for growth and self-actualization.
Absolutely.
It's not just about resolving inner conflicts. It's about striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
Exactly. Think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
You're not going to worry about fulfilling your creative potential if you're struggling to meet your basic needs for food, shelter, and safety.
That makes sense. And Rogers talked about the importance of a growth-promoting environment,
Yes.
one that provides genuineness, acceptance, and empathy.
Right?
It's like creating fertile soil for personal growth.
Exactly. It's about feeling safe and understood, allowing us to be our true selves and strive for our full potential.
Okay.
But how do we even begin to define and measure these different aspects of personality?
That's where trait theories come in, right?
Yeah.
Instead of trying to explain personality, they focus on describing it,
Right?
identifying those enduring patterns of behavior that make us unique.
Exactly. Trait theorists use a statistical technique called factor analysis
Okay.
to cluster traits together,
Mm.
like taking a massive amount of data about people's behaviors
Okay.
and finding the underlying patterns. Imagine you have hundreds of questions about how people act in different situations.
Okay.
Factor analysis helps identify which questions tend to be answered similarly,
Yeah.
suggesting that they're tapping into the same underlying trait.
Okay, so it's a way of making sense of the chaos and finding those core personality dimensions.
Exactly.
So how does that apply to concepts like introversion and extroversion?
Well, factor analysis helped identify introversion and extroversion as two fundamental dimensions of personality. The textbook dispels some common myths about introversion.
Okay.
It's not about being shy or socially awkward.
Right.
It's about how you respond to stimulation and how you recharge your energy.
So an introvert might prefer quiet, solitary activities to recharge,
Right.
while an extrovert thrives on social interaction and external stimulation.
Yes.
But how do we accurately measure these traits?
Mm-hmm.
Someone might describe themselves as an introvert, but how can we be sure?
That's where personality inventories come in.
Right.
They use carefully crafted questionnaires to assess our feelings and behaviors. One well-known example is the MMPI,
Okay.
which is used to diagnose personality disorders, but also gives insights into broader personality traits.
Okay, so it's not just about asking someone, are you introverted or extroverted?
No.
It's about using a more systematic and objective approach.
Right.
But are these tests foolproof?
That's a good question.
Can people fake their answers?
The textbook acknowledges that there are limitations to personality inventories.
Okay.
People can try to present themselves in a certain light, and computerized testing can sometimes lead to misuse.
Right.
However, these tests have been refined over decades of research
Yeah.
and provide valuable insights when used responsibly.
So it's a tool like any other that needs to be used with awareness of its strengths and limitations.
Exactly.
But it sounds like we've gotten much better at understanding and categorizing personality traits.
Absolutely. The development of the big five personality factors has been a major breakthrough. These 5 traits,
Yeah.
conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness to experience, and extroversion, provide a robust framework for understanding personality across cultures.
And these traits aren't just descriptive.
No.
The textbook mentions they can even predict certain life outcomes,
Right.
which seems incredibly powerful.
It is. For example, research has shown that conscientiousness is a strong predictor of job performance and academic success. People high in conscientiousness tend to be organized, responsible, and persistent,
Yeah.
which are valuable qualities in many areas of life.
So understanding someone's level of conscientiousness could help predict their likelihood of sticking to a workout routine,
Yes.
meeting deadlines, or even staying in a long-term relationship.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is.
But the textbook also mentions an important caveat,
Okay.
that while these traits can predict average behavior over time,
Yeah.
they can't tell us how someone will act in any specific situation.
Right.
Why is that?
That's because our personalities are dynamic and influenced by the situations we find ourselves in. This is where social cognitive theories like Bandura's work on reciprocal determinism come into play.
Reciprocal determinism.
Yeah.
It sounds complicated.
It's actually quite intuitive.
Okay.
It basically means that our behavior internal factors, like our thoughts and feelings,
Yeah.
and environmental factors, all influence each other in a constant interplay.
So someone who is generally introverted, for example,
Right.
might be more outgoing at a party with close friends than they would be at a networking event with strangers.
Exactly. It's not just about our inherent traits. It's about how those traits interact with the specific context.
Okay.
And understanding this interplay is crucial for gaining a deeper understanding of personality.
It's like realizing that personality is a dance between who we are and the situations we encounter,
Yes.
a constant negotiation between our inner world and the outer world.
Precisely.
Okay.
And this dance unfolds within the context of our sense of self, which is at the very core of personality. It's what organizes our thoughts, feelings, and actions,
Right.
giving us a sense of continuity and identity over time.
So it's not just about traits and situations.
Yeah.
It's about how we perceive ourselves within those contexts.
Exactly. And a key aspect of self is self-esteem,
Okay.
our overall sense of self-worth. Research has shown that healthy self-esteem is correlated with positive outcomes.
Yeah.
But it's not about inflating self-esteem artificially.
Right. It's not about telling kids they're amazing no matter what they do.
Exactly.
It's about fostering genuine self-worth by recognizing and rewarding their achievements.
Exactly.
And it's important to distinguish self-esteem from self-efficacy,
Yeah.
which is our belief in our ability to succeed in specific situations.
Right.
You can have high self-esteem but low self-efficacy in a particular area.
Absolutely.
So you might feel good about yourself overall,
Yeah.
but doubt your ability to, say, give a public speech
Yeah.
or ace a math test.
Right.
And that brings us to the other half of our deep dive.
Yep.
Psychological disorders. How do we define a psychological disorder, and
Right.
how does it relate to what we've been talking about?
While there's a complex interplay between personality and psychological disorders, at its core, a disorder involves clinically significant disturbances in an individual's cognition, emotion regulation, or behavior.
So it's not just feeling sad or anxious sometimes.
No.
It's when these feelings are so intense or persistent that they interfere with your ability to function in daily life.
Precisely. And how we understand these disorders has also evolved.
Okay.
The medical model views them as mental illnesses with biological causes, while the biopsychosocial perspective emphasizes the interplay of biological, psychological, and social factors.
So it's not just nature or nurture. It's
Yeah.
the complex interaction between our genes, our experiences, and our environment that shapes our mental health.
Exactly.
And the textbook mentioned the DSM-5,
Yeah.
which is used to classify and diagnose these disorders.
The DSM-5 provides a common language for mental health professionals, ensuring consistent diagnoses and facilitating research and communication.
But it's not without its critics, right?
That's true.
Some argue that it's become too broad, potentially pathologizing everyday experiences.
That's a valid concern.
Okay.
It highlights the importance of using the DSM-5 responsibly,
Yeah.
recognizing its limitations while acknowledging its value as a diagnostic tool.
It seems like navigating the world of mental health requires a nuanced understanding of both personality and disorders.
Absolutely.
So let's start exploring some specific types of disorders,
Okay.
beginning with anxiety disorders.
Yeah.
What are their hallmarks?
Anxiety disorders are characterized by fear and worry that are out of proportion to the situation.
Okay.
They can manifest in different ways,
Yeah.
like generalized anxiety disorder with its persistent tension,
Hmm.
panic disorder with its sudden episodes of intense fear,
Right.
or phobias with their irrational fears of specific objects or situations.
It's not just feeling stressed or worried. It's experiencing these feelings in a way that's debilitating and interferes with your life.
Exactly. And then there's obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD.
Mm.
It's like a loop that's hard to break free from.
Yeah.
Unwanted thoughts or obsessions
Yeah.
lead to repetitive behaviors or compulsions
Mm.
in an attempt to alleviate the anxiety caused by those thoughts.
It's like a mental tug of war that consumes a person's energy and focus.
Right.
And then there's post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD,
Yeah.
which develops after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event.
PTSD is characterized by intrusive memories, nightmares, avoidance of reminders of the trauma, negative thoughts and feelings, and hypervigilance.
Wow.
It's a complex condition that highlights the lasting impact of trauma on the brain and body.
It's a reminder that mental health is intricately connected to our experiences and how we process them.
Absolutely.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
From the evolution of personality theories to the defining characteristics of anxiety and trauma-related disorders. But there's so much more to explore.
Indeed, in the next part, we'll delve into the intricacies of other disorders like mood disorders and eating disorders,
Okay.
and examine the diverse approaches to treatment and therapy.
Join us as we continue our deep dive into the fascinating world of psychology,
Okay.
uncovering the complexities of the human mind and the myriad ways we can foster mental well-being.
Sounds good.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of psychology. In the last part, we explored the complexities of personality and touched upon some anxiety and trauma-related disorders. Now let's shift our focus to other psychological disorders like mood disorders and eating disorders. They can be equally debilitating, and yet they're often shrouded in misunderstanding.
You're absolutely right. These disorders can significantly impact a person's life, and understanding them is crucial for both those who experience them and those who support them.
So let's start with mood disorders. The term itself suggests intense shifts in mood, but what does that really look like?
Mood disorders involve significant disruptions in a person's emotional state, leading to periods of extreme sadness, elation, or both. Major depressive disorder, for instance, is characterized by persistent feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and loss of interest in things that were once enjoyable.
It's not just feeling down for a day or two. It's a pervasive sadness that affects a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors for an extended period. And then there's persistent depressive disorder, which sounds similar, but perhaps less intense.
That's right. Persistent depressive disorder, sometimes referred to as dysthymia, involves a chronic, low-grade depression that lasts for at least 2 years. While the symptoms might be less severe than in major depressive disorder, the chronicity can be incredibly draining.
So it's like a constant low hum of sadness that can wear a person down over time.
Yeah.
And then we have bipolar disorder, which I imagine is quite different from these depressive disorders.
Yes. Bipolar disorder involves dramatic shifts in mood that swing between periods of depression and mania. Mania is characterized by an elevated mood, increased energy-racing thoughts, and impulsive behavior. These shifts can be incredibly disruptive to a person's life.
It's like riding an emotional roller coaster with unpredictable highs and lows. And speaking of conditions that impact a person's well-being on multiple levels, let's discuss eating disorders.
Eating disorders are serious mental illnesses, characterized by a preoccupation with food weight and body image. They often involve distorted perceptions and unhealthy behaviors related to eating.
Right. Anorexia nervosa, for example, involves a relentless pursuit of thinness leading to self-starvation and a dangerously low body weight.
Exactly. People with anorexia often have an intense fear of gaining weight, even when they're severely underweight. Their self-perception is often distorted, seeing themselves as overweight when they're actually emaciated.
It's heartbreaking to think about the level of self-control and discipline involved in maintaining such a restrictive lifestyle, all driven by a distorted body image. And then there's bulimia nervosa, which involves a different set of behaviors.
Bulimia nervosa is characterized by cycles of binge eating, where a person consumes a large amount of food in a short period, followed by purging behaviors like self-induced vomiting or laxative use.
So it's like this push and pull between overindulging and then desperately trying to undo the perceived damage.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that eating disorders are complex conditions influenced by a combination of biological, psychological, and social factors.
So it's not just about vanity or a lack of willpower. It's about deep-seated psychological struggles that manifest in unhealthy relationships with food and body image. We've covered a wide range of psychological disorders, each with its own unique challenges and complexities. But what can be done to address these conditions and help people find healing and recovery?
That's where the world of therapy comes in. Therapy can broadly be divided into psychotherapy, which involves psychological techniques, and biomedical therapy, which focuses on medical interventions.
So it's like approaching mental health from two different angles, addressing both the mind and the body. Let's start with psychotherapy. What are some of the major approaches within this realm?
Psychotherapy encompasses a wide range of approaches, each with its own theoretical framework and techniques. Psychodynamic therapy, for example, has its roots in Freud's psychoanalysis, but has evolved into a briefer, more focused approach.
So it's less about delving into childhood traumas and more about understanding how past experiences and relationships might be influencing a person's present-day thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Exactly. It's about identifying patterns and themes that repeat themselves, helping people gain insight into their emotional lives and develop healthier coping mechanisms.
But isn't dwelling on the past sometimes counterproductive? How does modern psychodynamic therapy ensure it's not just rehashing old wounds without providing a path forward?
That's a great question. Modern psychodynamic therapy focuses on helping people understand how their past experiences might be contributing to their current challenges. But it's not about getting stuck in the past. It's about using that understanding to make positive changes in the present.
So it's like using the past as a guide for navigating the present and creating a brighter future. And how does humanistic therapy differ from this approach?
Humanistic therapy, as exemplified by Carl Rogers' client-centered approach, shifts the focus away from the therapist as the expert and toward the client as the authority on their own experience.
That sounds incredibly empowering. But how does a client-centered therapist actually help someone who's struggling with concrete problems like anxiety or depression? Isn't there a risk of just validating a person's negative thoughts and feelings without providing any real solutions?
You raise an important point. While client-centered therapy emphasizes empathy and unconditional positive regard, it's not about simply agreeing with everything the client says. It's about creating a safe and supportive space for them to explore their own thoughts and feelings, gain self-awareness, and find their own solutions.
So it's like the therapist acts as a guide, helping the client navigate their inner landscape and discover their own strengths and resources for healing. It's about empowering them to take ownership of their mental health journey. And what about behavior therapy? It seems to take a more practical approach, focusing on changing behaviors rather than exploring deep-seated emotions.
Absolutely. Behavior therapy is rooted in the principles of learning and conditioning, applying them to modify problematic behaviors. It's less about the why behind the behavior and more about the how of changing it.
So instead of digging into a person's childhood to understand why they have a phobia of spiders, for example, behavior therapy would focus on techniques like exposure therapy to help them gradually overcome their fear.
Exactly. By repeatedly exposing the person to spiders in a safe and controlled environment, they can learn to manage their anxiety and eventually break free from the cycle of fear and avoidance.
It's like retraining the brain to respond differently to the feared object or situation. And then there's cognitive therapy, which seems to focus on the power of our thoughts.
Cognitive therapy, developed by Aaron Beck, is based on the idea that our thoughts play a crucial role in shaping our emotions and behaviors. It helps people identify and challenge negative thought patterns that contribute to their psychological distress.
So it's like recognizing those automatic negative thoughts that pop into our heads and then consciously choosing to question them and replace them with more balanced and realistic perspectives.
Precisely. Cognitive therapists help their clients become aware of these cognitive distortions, evaluate their validity, and develop more adaptive ways of thinking.
It's about becoming the CEO of your own mind, so to speak, taking control of your thoughts rather than letting them control you. And it seems like cognitive therapy and behavior therapy could work really well together.
You're right. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is a widely used approach that combines the best of both worlds. It addresses both maladaptive thoughts and behaviors, providing a comprehensive framework for addressing a wide range of psychological challenges.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach tackling both the internal and external aspects of a person's struggles. And we've been focusing on psychotherapy, but we can't forget about biomedical therapies, which involve medical interventions like medications.
Of course, biomedical therapies aim to treat psychological disorders by directly affecting the body's biological processes. For instance, antipsychotic medications are used to manage the symptoms of schizophrenia by targeting neurotransmitters in the brain.
So it's like addressing those underlying biological factors that might be contributing to the disorder. And antidepressants are another common form of biomedical therapy.
Antidepressants such as SSRIs work by increasing the availability of serotonin in the brain, which can help alleviate the symptoms of depression. However, it's important to remember that medication is not a cure-all and often works best in conjunction with psychotherapy.
Right. It's about finding the right balance between addressing the biological and psychological aspects of mental health. And it's crucial to work closely with a qualified medical professional to find the right medication and dosage for each individual.
Absolutely. It's a collaborative process, and the goal is to find the most effective approach for each person, taking into account their unique needs and circumstances.
We've covered a lot of ground in this part, exploring various psychological disorders and the different therapeutic approaches used to address them. It's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to mental health.
That's right. Each person's journey is unique, and finding the right path to healing and recovery often involves a combination of approaches tailored to their specific needs.
But before we delve further into the treatment landscape, let's take a step back and explore some fascinating areas where psychology intersects with other fields like economics and social psychology.
That's a great idea. Understanding how psychology influences our decision-making, social interactions, and cultural perspectives can provide even deeper insights into the complexities of human behavior.
So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into the world of psychology, uncovering the myriad ways it shapes our lives and the world around us. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of psychology. So far, we've explored the complexities of personality, delved into various psychological disorders, and touched upon therapeutic approaches. Now let's broaden our lens and see how psychology intersects with other fascinating fields.
It's incredible how psychology permeates so many aspects of our lives. It's not just about what happens inside our heads. It's about how we interact with the world around us, how we make decisions, and how we navigate the complexities of social and cultural influences.
Exactly. It's like realizing that psychology is woven into the very fabric of human experience. So where should we start? What other domains of knowledge have benefited from psychological insights?
Well, one area that's been revolutionized by psychology is economics. Traditional economics often assume that people are rational decision makers, always choosing the option that maximizes their self-interest. But behavioral economics has challenged that assumption, showing that our choices are often influenced by emotions, biases, and cognitive shortcuts.
So it's not just about cold, hard calculations. It's about recognizing that we're humans, not robots, and our decisions are often influenced by factors that aren't purely rational.
Precisely. For example, loss aversion. The tendency to feel the pain of a loss more strongly than the pleasure of an equivalent gain can lead to irrational financial decisions. We might hold on to a losing stock for too long simply because we don't want to admit defeat, even when it's not in our best financial interest to do so.
It's like our emotions are clouding our judgment, preventing us from making the most logical choice. And I've heard of something called framing effects, where the way information is presented can influence our choices even if the underlying facts are the same.
That's a classic example of how psychology can shape our decision-making. Imagine you're offered a surgery with a 90% survival rate versus one with a 10% mortality rate. The information is the same, but the framing evokes different emotional responses, potentially influencing your decision.
It's amazing how easily our minds can be swayed, even when we think we're being perfectly rational. And speaking of being swayed, let's talk about social psychology, which explores how our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are influenced by others.
Social psychology is a treasure trove of insights, helping us understand phenomena like conformity, obedience to authority, and the power of social situations. Think about the famous Milgram experiments.
Oh, yes. The ones where participants were willing to administer what they thought were painful electric shocks to another person simply because an authority figure told them to do so.
Exactly. It was a chilling demonstration of how susceptible we can be to social pressure, even when it conflicts with our moral compass. And social psychology also sheds light on prejudice and discrimination.
Right. It's not just about individual biases. It's about understanding the social dynamics and cognitive processes that contribute to these harmful attitudes and behaviors. It's about recognizing how systemic factors can perpetuate inequality and injustice, even when individuals might not be consciously aware of their own biases.
Absolutely. And speaking of understanding different perspectives, cultural psychology plays a vital role in recognizing that our cultural backgrounds shape our values, beliefs, and behaviors.
So our culture influences how we see the world, how we relate to others, and even how we understand ourselves.
Precisely. For example, individualistic cultures like the United States tend to prioritize personal goals and independence, while collectivistic cultures like many Asian cultures place greater emphasis on group harmony and interdependence. These cultural differences can have a profound impact on how we interpret situations, express our emotions, and make decisions.
It's a reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to understanding human behavior. What might be considered normal or healthy in one culture might be viewed differently in another.
Exactly. It's crucial to consider these cultural nuances when studying psychology and applying psychological principles.
It's been an incredible journey exploring the vast and intricate world of psychology. We've covered so much ground, from the depths of the unconscious mind to the complexities of social and cultural influences.
And we've only just scratched the surface. But hopefully this deep dive has provided you with a solid foundation for understanding yourself and the world around you.
It's been an eye-opening experience, reminding us that psychology is more than just a subject in a textbook. It's a lens through which we can view the world, a tool for understanding the complexities of human behavior, and a source of insights that can empower us to live more fulfilling and meaningful lives.
And remember, the journey doesn't end here. There's always more to learn and explore. Keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep seeking a deeper understanding of yourself and others. The world of psychology is vast and ever-evolving, offering endless opportunities for discovery and growth.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of psychology. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and that you'll continue to explore the wonders of the human mind.